The Waitress made the billionaire's disabled son dance. His first dance, and his life changed. This story follows Camille Brooks, a black waitress in a high-end Boston restaurant, who defies expectations by letting 10-year-old Elijah Harper, partially paralyzed, and son of a powerful tech mogul, lead her in a slow, imperfect dance. What began as a simple act of dignity becomes a transformative journey for a family trapped in grief, a boy longing to be seen, and a woman with a silent mission to change how healing is understood. Camille Brooks never intended to make headlines. She only meant to keep her sister's rent paid. On a Friday night, Braxton's buzzed with discreet toasts and negotiations, and Camille drifted among tables like a well-timed shadow. She was halfway to the kitchen when she noticed the Harper boy stiffen. Elijah's braces clicked as he shifted eyes fixed on the pianist, coaxing a slow waltz from the baby grand. Nathan Harper, king of cloud infrastructure used to controlling every variable, didn't notice his son stirring. He was texting a vice president when Elijah suddenly pushed back his chair. Metal scraped. Conversation stopped. A brittle tension crackled through the dining room. Elijah extended a shaking hand toward Camille. No words, just a desperate plea behind wire-rimmed glasses. Camille's training said, "Freeze, defer to management." Thornton, the maitre d', hissed, "Miss Brooks, move along." "Mr. Harper, restrain your child. This isn't a dance hall." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Elijah, sit. Now." 2 years of specialists had taught the boy obedience, but not courage. The patrons waited for spectacle. Camille saw tears pool at Elijah's eyes, and something inside her unlocked. She slipped off her apron, set it on a bread plate, and offered a tiny bow. "May I have this dance?" Elijah's lips parted in surprise. He nodded. Gasps stirred. Camille didn't guide him. She mirrored him. When his right foot dragged, she matched the rhythm. The pianist softened the tempo. 3 uneven steps carried them between linen islands. Braces squeaked, yet humiliation never came, only Camille's steady eyes. Nathan rose halfway, torn memories of his late wife teaching Elijah to dance before the accident slicing through him. Thornton muttered about disciplined diners, whispered lawsuits, but none of it landed. All Nathan heard was Elijah's breathless laughter, thin but alive. Camille eased Elijah back to his seat. "Thank you for leading," she said, as if he were the host. Elijah's smile lit the room brighter than chandeliers. Silence lingered, then cutlery resumed. Nathan swallowed a storm and managed Miss. He groped for her name. "Camille," she supplied, reclaiming her apron. He produced a silver-edged card. "My office, 10 a.m." Camille accepted, though her pulse hammered. As she turned, Elijah tugged his father's sleeve. "Dad." "Did you see?" The question pierced Nathan's armor. For the first time since the crash, he truly looked at his son not as a fragile project, but as a child who had just commanded a room. Camille walked toward the staff door, head high. Whispers trailed her, cruel and awed, but she didn't listen. Tomorrow might bring unemployment, maybe worse. Yet Elijah's radiant grin played on repeat, louder than fear. She had followed a hunch, trusted a boy, and for 90 heartbeats the world had changed shape. She intended to see where that change might lead. The next morning, Camille stood on the curb outside Harpertech Tower, the flyer for her dance program folded so tightly in her fist, it rippled like a leaf in a storm. She had slept 3 hours, half convinced security would bar her shift at Braxton's and strip her slim paycheck away. Yet Elijah's laughter kept echoing, daring her to follow the change she had felt brewing in that room. So here she was, hair-pressed thrift store blazer, hiding coffee stains, ready to test whether Nathan Harper's silver card was invitation or trap. Inside, marble floors gleamed like polished ice. People in tailored wool parted around Camille, the way water curls past a stone, polite but pointedly distant. She advanced to reception, announced her name, and waited, while a headset-clad woman tracked her from shoes to scalp. 18th floor, the receptionist said finally, tone sharp as a gavel. "Ms. Alden will collect you." The elevator lifted Camille through silence, thicker than last night's hush. She stared at her reflection in brass panels, a slender black woman in borrowed heels, eyes steadier than she felt. At floor 18, a severe redhead greeted her. Not a handshake, just a glance that said temporary curiosity. "Mr. Harper is finishing a call. This way." Glass corridors flashed with conference rooms and hovering drones of conversation. Heads turned. Surprise flickered, quickly masked. Camille's guide deposited her in a minimalist anteroom and left wordlessly, heels ticking like metronomes. Camille sat, knees square, palms flat, remembering every service job that had taught her to shrink. She refused to shrink now. 10 minutes. 15. The hush was clearly a test. She thought of Elijah's brace. Scraping the parquet courage can sound like failure before it proves itself. Finally, a door eased open. "Miss Brooks, Nathan Harper," said, voice controlled but strangely soft. He beckoned her into an office walled by sky. Boston sprawled beneath them like circuitry. The first seconds were chess. Nathan motioned at a chair, remained standing, calculating altitude. Camille accepted neither intimidation nor the bottled water offered by an assistant. She waited. "I appreciate you coming," he began. "Yesterday, you exceeded your job description." "I no longer have that job," Camille answered. Thornton had texted at dawn, suspension pending review. She delivered the fact without flinching. Nathan's eyelid twitched, regret or annoyance unclear. "I've read about you." A folder appeared. Articles, grant requests, photos of children dancing around walkers. Kinetic Steps, co-founded with your sister Noelle. Adaptive movement for kids with motor challenges. You left your psychology degree unfinished to support the program. Camille nodded once. "Not a secret. I employ specialists worldwide," Nathan pressed. "Yet last night, my son smiled for the first time in 2 years. You did that. I want you to work exclusively with Elijah Travel Equipment, anything you need. Salaried at 5 times your current income." The offer hung between them like a shining sword. Camille pictured overdue bills, her sister's dwindling medication fund, the center's rent. It would solve everything on paper. She inhaled slowly. "Your son doesn't need another employee pretending devotion. He needs space to make his own choices, not yours. Money can't buy that." Nathan's brow hardened. "Pride is expensive. Dignity is priceless." She corrected, producing the creased flyer. "We meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 p.m. Roxbury Community Hall. First class is free." Nathan stared at the flimsy sheet, as if it were a foreign language. "You're declining. I'm inviting?" Camille clarified. "If Elijah leads, I'll follow. If you agree, we find out what he can do without someone steering every breath." Disbelief flickered, then something deeper, fear laced with hope. For a man who reshaped markets overnight, relinquishing control felt like walking a narrow beam over open water. "I rejected a proposal for this program last year," he muttered almost to himself. "Twice," Camille corrected gently. "You never read past the budget lines." A silence longer than the elevator's climb settled. Nathan folded the flyer with precise fingers. "Tomorrow is Thursday," he said at last. 4 p.m. "Bring comfortable shoes," Camille replied, rising. She extended her hand. After a moment, he shook it. His grip was firm, but hers was steady. As Camille rode the elevator down, she pictured Elijah's astonished grin when the billionaire actually stepped into that scruffy hall. Change, she realized, wasn't a chandelier crashing in grandeur. It was a hinge turning quietly, letting new air into a locked room. And hinges could be moved by hands like hers. Camille stepped through the lobby's revolving doors, just as dawn broke, a thin line of roselight slicing the skyline. All night, she'd weighed the odds of Nathan Harper actually showing up. Moneyed men were experts at grand promises that never crossed into scruffy neighborhoods. But she trusted the look that had flashed across his face in the office. Raw uncertainty, cleaving the armor of certainty. Hinges had moved. Now, doors had to open. Thursday, 3rd, 5:55 p.m. The Roxbury Community Hall smelled of floor varnish and laundry soap. Kinetic steps met in a refurbished basketball court. No mirrors, no bars, just taped squares on polished wood, and a Bluetooth speaker coughing lo-fi beats. Children clustered in small groups, curiosity beating out nerves. Noelle signaled from the registration desk, her cropped curls streaked with paint from morning art classes. "Do you see a Bentley?" she mouthed. Camille shook her head, pretending calm. Inside her stomach churned. At 3:59, the double doors parted. Elijah emerged first, braces gleaming tie-askew hair, combed too perfectly for a dance class. He clutched the flyer like a passport. Nathan followed, stripped of suit jacket, his crisp shirt rolled at the sleeves. His eyes mapped the hall, exposed ducts, battered folding chairs, walls plastered with kids' drawings of stick figures mid-pirouette. He looked ready to bolt, but Elijah's grip on his wrist held him in place. Camille crossed the floor. "You made it," she said, as if she'd never doubted it. Elijah beamed. Nathan offered a fractional nod, the smallest bow of surrender. "Where do we sign in?" he asked, voice pitched low to hide anxiety. 5 minutes later, Elijah stood inside a taped square, braces, locked hands hovering near his sides. Around him, a boy with a prosthetic blade bounced in sync to the beat, while a girl in a power chair spun gentle circles. Camille explained the rule: no one touches unless invited. Movement starts with what feels possible, not what looks perfect. Nathan planted himself by the bleacher's, arms folded. Camille caught the tension in his shoulders, years of gatekeeping his son's safety etched there. She forced herself not to soften it with reassurance. Elijah needed to feel the room, not feel his father's fear. Dr. Miriam Chase arrived midway through warm-ups, leaning on a carbon fiber cane that matched her steel gray twists. She greeted Camille with a brief hug, then turned to Nathan. "Mr. Harper, we meet at last." He frowned, searching memory. She saved him the effort. "2 grant proposals. You declined both." He flushed. "Didn't realize you'd be hands-on." "Science goes where the children are," she replied, then drifted away to observe. Music shifted to a slower track. Camille demonstrated a simple sway weight. Left weight, right, no lifts, no spins. Elijah mirrored her from across the court, microseconds behind concentration, furrowing his brow. A sheen of sweat gathered. Braces clicked louder with each transfer of weight. Camille raised her arm, inviting anyone ready to change height. A girl in braces crouched, touching tape with her fingertips. Elijah's eyes widened. He wanted in. Nathan tensed. Camille felt it like static. She flashed him a quick glance. "Wait." He pressed lips together, forcing stillness. Elijah bent his knees millimeters. Metal hinges squealed. He didn't flinch. Instead, he tapped his left brace's release latch, just a test. Camille's heart rocketed. Across the hall, Dr. Chase lifted her phone to record data. Noelle cut the music volume by half, instinctively amplifying the moment's quiet. The entire class seemed to orbit Elijah's decision. Kids stilled, sensing history. Even Nathan's phone, habitually welded to his palm, hung forgotten at his side. Camille counted Elijah's breaths. Inhale, exhale, fingers trembling on the latch. He swallowed, eyes locking with hers, across 12 feet of hardwood. "Whenever you're ready," she mouthed. The latch clicked open. One brace loosened, leather strap sliding free. Elijah exhaled a shaky laugh, half terror, half wonder. His unsupported leg quivered, muscles long dormant, calling up courage. Camille's pulse pounded so loudly, she feared he could hear it. Nathan took a reflexive step forward. Camille raised a hand. He froze mid-stride. To interfere now would steal the moment forever. Elijah shifted weight, testing the earth beneath a foot that hadn't felt unfiltered pressure since the accident. The gym's fluorescent lights buzzed. Outside, traffic hummed. Inside, not a child breathed. Camille held her own oxygen hostage, knowing the first attempt might end in collapse, but knowing, too, that failure freely chosen beats success imposed. Elijah lifted his heel. Gravity fought him. Sweat streaked his temple. Then, he set the heel down again. No fall, just a tremor. His face broke into astonishment, Then, determination. The unlaced brace dangled. He wasn't done. Camille's timer beeped faintly, marking the end of warm-up. No one moved to stop. They were suspended in that hinge of time, waiting to discover whether the next sound would be triumph or a crash of metal against wood. The silence broke first, with a single gasp. Camille's own too quiet for the gallery of children to register, yet loud enough inside her chest to feel like a shout. Elijah lifted his unsupported leg a second time higher, the dangling brace clinking against the metal, still locked to his other calf. For a breathless instant, he balanced on muscles doctors had called permanently compromised. His sneaker trembled, ankle wobbling, but he stayed upright. Nathan's eyes widened. Every instinct screamed to catch to shield. He clenched his fists so hard, his nails bit crescents into his palms. The ache anchored him in place. Across the court, Camille held his gaze a wordless plea, let the boy decide. Elijah set the foot down, heel-toe discovering floorboards, as if they were new terrain. A ripple of electricity flickered through the watching kids. Should they cheer? Should they hold still? A younger girl in a wheelchair clapped, once the sound crisp as a starter pistol. It startled Elijah, but did not topple him. Instead, he grinned wild and disbelieving. "Neural re-recruitment in real time, doctor," Chase whispered. Phone recording data bursts her voice thin with wonder. "Do you see the anterior tibialis firing? My God!" Elijah inhaled, slid his hand to the latch on the second brace. Nathan's heart punched his ribs. One brace was miracle enough. Two felt like madness. Camille shook her head slightly, not yet guiding Elijah with a subtle tilt of her chin. He understood, returned focus to the leg, already free. "Shift your weight," she murmured. He did hips, swaying arms out for balance the way Camille had shown earlier. Sweat fogged his glasses. The room's old air conditioner rattled a nervous drum roll. Then, the side door banged open. Two local reporters, tipped by a parent, slipped inside with cameras raised. Nathan's protective reflex flared. This was private fragile. But before he could object, a flashbulb ignited, catching Elijah mid-stance, one knee bent like a runner poised to launch. The boy startled, ankle buckling. Gasps skittered across the court. Nathan lurched forward too late. Camille darted in palm, hovering near Elijah's shoulder, without touching. "Breathe," she said. "Your pace, your rules." Elijah steadied, eyes locked on hers. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his trailing foot. No brace, no spotter. One bare step carried him beyond the tape's border. Wood creaked beneath a weight it had never felt. Elijah's mouth fell open. Laughter tumbled out shaky and triumphant. A wave of applause rose uncontrolled. Now children, parents, even Noel slapping the scorer's table like a drum. Nathan's vision blurred. Memories flooded his late wife spinning Elijah in the kitchen, promising there was music in every footfall. He had buried that sound the day metal frames became his son's cage. Now the melody returned, led by a child's uneven cadence. Camille knelt to Elijah's eye level. "How did that feel?" "Like I'm not broken," he whispered. Camera shutters kept clicking. Nathan brushed tears with the back of his hand first, stealthy, then uncaring who saw. He turned to Dr. Chase. "Is this sustainable?" "Not instantly," she said, still awed. "But the signal pathways just prove they're alive. That changes everything." The younger girl wheeled closer, offering Elijah a playful fist bump. He returned it, confidence blooming. Behind them, the reporters circled toward Nathan. "Mr. Harper," one called voice echoing in the rafters. "Could you comment on your presence here today? Sources say the Harper Foundation rejected funding for this program." Every head pivoted. The applause faded, replaced by a hush sharper than the one that had started all of this. Nathan stood in a ring of expectation. Executives, parents, children, lenses. He glanced at Camille, saw no judgment, only steady waiting. Elijah's radiant face lingered in his peripheral vision, proof that a fortress of caution could crumble in a single, unguarded moment. Nathan drew a breath, words forming a choice between deflection and something terrifyingly honest. The cameras blinked, red hungry. He squared his shoulders, ready to speak. Nathan leveled his gaze at the nearest lens. "You ask why I'm here," he said, voice carrying across the gym. "I'm here because my son just proved possibility isn't determined by spreadsheets." A murmur spread. He continued, "The Harper Foundation will fund Kinetic Steps for the next 5 years and build the first dedicated movement autonomy center in the state, designed by the children it serves." Reporters fired questions. Nathan raised a hand. "On one condition, Camille Brooks and her team maintain full control. No corporate interference." The declaration detonated across social feeds within the hour. Some hailed philanthropy. Skeptics sniffed PR stunt. Camille ignored both camps. She had a construction timeline to hit. 3 months later, bulldozers carved a vacant lot in Roxbury into raw clay. Portable offices rattled with the grind of backhoes. Camille squinted at blueprints on a folding table. Elijah leaning beside her, now wearing only a single brace and a sneaker customized with neon laces he'd chosen himself. Nathan arrived in rolled-up sleeves and steel-toe boots that still looked expensive. He carried 2 coffees and a manila folder stuffed with annotated research papers. "Morning," he said, almost shy. Camille accepted the coffee, but not the small talk. "We're behind on the east ramp," she told him. "Kids in chairs shouldn't wait on cement cures." He nodded, scanning the site. "I talked to the contractor. They're doubling the crew tonight." Elijah tugged Camille's sleeve. "Can we show Dad the sensory wall design?" She smiled, softening despite herself, and watched father and son pore over sketches of textured panels and LED strips. The boys' excitement made physics out of dreams. Back at the temporary office, Nathan spread his papers. "I've been reading about neuroplasticity," he said, tapping a highlighted paragraph. "Chase thinks variable pattern movement accelerates cortical remapping." Camille raised an eyebrow. "Homework impressive. Motivation unclear." He met her eyes squarely. "Public guilt got me to sign checks. But this," he gestured toward, hammering in the distance, "this is different." When Elijah took that step, the world flipped. "I'm trying to understand the new rules. You could start by apologizing," she suggested, half teasing, half true. "I fund, I reorganize. I fix," he said. "Apologies feel inadequate. Try anyway." He opened his mouth, closed it, then shrugged. "Working on it." The board meeting that afternoon jolted him back into old reflexes. 12 directors sat around polished walnut hostile numbers, glowing on a projector. Cost overruns, public skepticism, no guaranteed ROI. Philanthropy is fine, a CFO sniffed, but a vanity clinic in a low-income district undermines shareholder trust. Nathan's pulse kicked. Somewhere outside, Camille was marking door widths with chalk. He took a breath and broke from the script. "We're not discussing a vanity clinic," he said. "We're investing in a model that will rewrite pediatric rehabilitation." Brows knitted. He added, "And if any director considers that off mission, there's a vacant seat waiting." Silence. One by one, objections folded. When the motion passed, Nathan caught himself smiling. Not the polished boardroom grin, but something rarer and less certain. That evening, he returned to the site. Floodlights bathed unfinished beams. Camille stood alone, measuring clearance under a joist. She didn't look up. "Heard you rattled your board," she said. "Bad for your brand." "Brands can evolve," he answered, handing her a hard hat. "We pour the slab tomorrow. Could use another set of eyes at dawn." She smirked. "I start every day at dawn." They walked the framework together, Elijah's earlier laughter lingering in the air like a promise. Nathan pointed to a second-story alcove. "Sensory quiet room." "Exactly. Some kids need retreat as much as challenge." They paused on the raw plywood deck. City lights shimmered beyond scaffolding. Nathan exhaled. "You were right. Money can't buy freedom, but maybe it can clear space for it." Camille rested her clipboard against a stud. "Money is just steel and concrete. Freedom's what kids build inside those walls." He looked out over the lot, imagining Elijah racing its corridors brace-free. For the first time, his empire felt small, beside a single human stride. So he said softly about that apology. "Keep showing up," she replied. "We'll call it even when Elijah forgets he ever needed braces." The generator cut for the night, plunging them into quiet. Nathan reached for a flashlight, but Camille was already moving confidently through the dark skeleton of the future, trusting her own blueprint of light to come. The darkness inside the unfinished center swallowed Camille's silhouette, yet Nathan heard her confident steps echo off plywood ribs. He flicked on his flashlight and followed the narrow beam, catching her smile. "Light will come," she'd said. 6 months later, it did flood-length panes, throwing sunrise across polished cork floors, the smell of new paint mixing with sawdust and possibility. Opening day arrived with autumn wind-snapping banners that read, "Kinetic steps, your pace, your power." Parents clustered under space heater lamps. Children tested railings that slid like satin beneath cautious palms. Nathan stood at the entrance in a charcoal sweater suits, felt wrong here, holding a speech he'd rehearsed but might never use. He watched Camille move room to room, checking wheelchair clearance with the same battered tape measure she'd wielded on day one. Noel directed volunteers. Dr. Chase greeted neurologists flown in to observe, and Elijah, now in a single lightweight brace, paced his own nervous circuit backstage. Camille found Nathan by the adaptive playground. "You look terrified," she teased. Terrified and grateful, he admitted, eyes following Elijah's reflection in a plexiglass panel. "Second brace gone next month if progress holds." His surgeon called the X-rays statistical mischief. "Statistics hate outliers," she said. "Outliers change the math." A brass trio struck the opening chord inside the main hall. Crowds drifted toward rows of folding seats. Nathan hesitated. Camille nudged him forward. On stage, a simple set colored tape lines forming a star, 4 microphones for narration, and a single stool in case fatigue struck. Elijah and 3 friends, Ruby, with a forearm crutch, Mateo on a carbon blade, and Jana in a sleek wheelchair, took positions as the lights dimmed. A hush settled thicker than the one in Braxton's months ago. Soft percussion rose. The children began. The routine was modest. Sway's light turns, a sequence of shared balances, but every movement had been chosen by them. Camille watched from the wings, resisting the urge to mouth counts. Nathan sat in the front row, hands locked, heartbeat drumming in his ears. Midway through, Elijah stepped to center tape. He paused, breath clouding in cool air, then lifted his last brace latch. The Velcro gave a small rip, magnified by microphones. He braced on his cane, shifted weight, and drew the free leg forward. One step, then another. The audience leaned as if gravity itself might tip in the child's favor. Elijah completed a slow pivot brace, dangling from his fist like a shed chrysalis, before dropping it to the floor with a metallic clatter that sounded exactly like victory. Cheers erupted, uneven, unchoreographed, perfect. Nathan felt sound slam his chest. Tears blurred his vision until stage lights became comets. Ruby rolled to Elijah's side, offering a stabilizing palm he accepted only for a heartbeat, before flashing a grin that said, "I've got this." As applause ebbed, a reporter edged toward Nathan. "Mr. Harper, could you comment on witnessing your son's progression?" Nathan rose, speech pages forgotten. He looked at Elijah, helping Ruby navigate a spin at Mateo, timing hops to music at Jana, tapping her wheel rim in perfect rhythm. "I used to believe leadership meant having every answer," he said into the handheld mic. "But the most profound thing I've learned is how powerful it is to follow when someone smaller shows you a better path." He gestured to the stage. "Those kids aren't our charity projects. They're our teachers." Flashes strobed. Camille slipped beside him, whispering, "Not bad for a man who wouldn't apologize." He answered low enough for her alone. "I'm sorry it took so long to listen." She nodded, once apology accepted. When the routine ended, Elijah bounded offstage, cane tucked under his arm like a trophy. He crashed into Nathan's hug, laughing, breathless. "Did you see?" he asked. "I saw you lead the room," Nathan said, voice thick. Camille joined them, crouching to Elijah's height. "Ready to teach the next class?" she asked. Elijah raised his cane like a conductor's baton. "Let's build more outliers," he declared. And in that reclaimed warehouse beneath strings of cheap lights that felt richer than chandeliers, every adult silently agreed to follow the boy who had learned to walk by choosing his own first step. The promise Elijah made that night to build more outliers didn't fade with the applause. It became the center's heartbeat. Weeks turned into months, and every Tuesday afternoon, he planted himself by the entrance greeting newcomers with a grin wide enough to eclipse his lingering cane. Kids arrived from suburbs and shelters alike, some timid, some loud, all carrying bodies that defied textbook predictions. Elijah collected their fears like trading cards and handed back possibilities. Camille watched the transformation with a curator's pride. Administrative chaos multiplied grant forms, volunteer rosters, press requests, but she guarded the program's soul as fiercely as any mother. Your pace, your power wasn't marketing. It was a boundary against every adult who still believed faster was better. She caught corporate donors trying to slip in logoed banners and politely shredded them. Nathan, now the board's loudest defender of non-branding, backed her at every meeting. The center's first anniversary arrived on a bright October morning. Sunlight spilled through skylights onto a floor, painted with new pathways, some curved, some zigzagged, designed by the kids after months of debate. The program had expanded to Providence and Hartford. Plans for Philadelphia waited in Camille's desk. Reporters from a national health network set up cameras near the trophy wall, where photos documented each child's first chosen step. Elijah's frame hung crooked from over-admiring hands. He left it that way, proof imperfection could still lead. At 10 a.m., the main hall filled for Founders Day. Dr. Chase opened with data, 43% average increase in functional mobility across all participants, a figure that made neurologists whistle. But the room only lit up when Elijah rolled on stage, a portable whiteboard covered in messy kid handwriting. "These are our next goals," he announced, tapping a bullet list backyard gardening class mobile van to visit homebound kids' inner-city dance exchange. His cane leaned useless beside him. He hadn't needed it in weeks. Nathan sat in the front row, again, notepad balanced on his knee. Time had drawn softer lines around his eyes, the hard edges of certainty replaced by restless curiosity. He jotted every item Elijah mentioned as if the boy chaired the meeting, which in effect he did. When applause broke out, Nathan didn't lead it. He followed the rhythm Elijah struck on the lectern. Afterward, Camille slipped into her cramped office to finalize the Philadelphia lease. Paper towers framed her desk like skyscrapers. A knock sounded. Nathan poked his head in hair, wind-tossed from outdoor games he'd just lost to a squad of 10-year-olds. "Got a minute?" he asked. She gestured to the only uncluttered chair. He handed her an envelope embossed with a gold seal. "The National Pediatric Rehab Association. They're giving you the Innovation Award next month in D.C. You'll need a speech." Camille blinked. "You nominated me." "Technically, Elijah did," he said. "I just mailed the form." She opened the envelope. Inside, amid formal congratulations, was a handwritten note. "Thank you for letting me choose. E." Tears pricked unexpectedly. She blinked them clear. "I hate speeches," she muttered. "Just tell them what you told me. Freedom's what kids build inside the walls we clear for them." A bustle rose from the corridor, the afternoon session gathering. Camille tucked the letter into a folder. "Come on," she said. "Elijah's running warm-ups." They entered the gym to find the boy orchestrating a relay of improbable balances, wheelchair spins handed off to cartwheels, prosthetic hops syncing with cane taps. He spotted Nathan and Camille and motioned them into the line. Groans from adults, giggles from kids, but no one refused. Nathan took a tentative hop step, nearly lost his balance, and heard Elijah shout, "Your pace, Mr. Harper." The room erupted in laughter, including Nathan's deep and unguarded. Later, as dusk bled purple across the skylights, Elijah pulled Camille aside. "Remember the night at Braxton's?" he asked. "How could I forget? I was scared Dad would stop me." But you didn't guide me, you followed. Will you keep following even when I mess up? Camille placed a hand over his. Leadership is choosing your steps, she said. Following is trusting you'll find the next one. Across the hall, Nathan watched them, heart swelling with a humility that still surprised him daily. He wasn't the empire builder here, only a man lucky enough to witness one. And as Elijah turned back to organize an impromptu freestyle, Nathan realized the balance of their lives had permanently shifted. The richest lessons now flowed upward from child to parent, student to teacher dancer, to those still learning how to stand. Outside streetlights flickered on. Inside movement continued, sometimes graceful, often awkward, always chosen. The center thrummed with the unshakable knowledge that power once surrendered could be transformed into something larger than anyone who had tried to own it. And in that ever-expanding space, every first step, no matter how wobbly, was met with a chorus ready to follow.